What's the point? It doesn't matter.
Okay, I'm going to call this meeting to order, please. Thank you. For the webcam, missing is the Mayor Parish, and Regional Councillor Jordan and Collier. They're detained at the region at their meeting, so, but we've still got a quorum, so we're going to go proceed with the agenda. So, is there any disclosure of pecuniary interest? Could I have a motion to adopt the minutes? Moved by Randy. All those in favor? I have 3 items that are pulled, but 2 were Regional Councillor Jordan's, 4.1 and 4.4. So if they come later, we'll address their questions. 4.13 is Councillor Crawford.
Thank you, Madam Chair. A topic that's near and dear to my heart is our issue with the tow truck that we've been dealing with, and so I don't know, Derek, do you want to go through it, or do you want just to tell you what my thoughts are?
Through the chair, if you just want to ask a question.
Okay, so I appreciate your report, and I do thank you for putting it together. I know it was a short timeline, and I know you're very busy. So my concern is that I'm not concerned actually at all around commercial vehicles.
There's 2 people.
Yeah.
Come on in, yes.
Yeah, I am not concerned actually so much around the commercial vehicles in this particular bylaw. I am interested, though, in specifically dealing with tow trucks, and not. I don't believe that it's an unreasonable request to ask that tow trucks be reduced to 1 tow truck per dwelling, and so that's what I would like to actually have done right now. Is to be able to create an interim bylaw that would state, even specific to the area that we're discussing, that only 1 tow truck per dwelling in a residential area, and then have this implemented right away with the purpose of reviewing it at the time when you go through your bylaw review. Was it 2014? 2013?
The zoning bylaw scheduled for 2014.
2014. Because 2 years is too long to let it go at this point. And so that's what I would like. Is that a motion? Do I have to make a motion?
We'll see to have discussion first, and then do motions.
Through the chair, it would be an amendment to the current zoning bylaw that would be requested to go through now. That would limit that. With regard to the conditions that are happening throughout the town now, and specifically at this current address, it wouldn't change how business practices are. We've had discussions with the town solicitor, and the zoning bylaw is a use regarding commercial vehicles or vehicles under 1 ton is a use. It would be legal non-conforming. So even if the bylaw was passed tomorrow to limit 1 tow truck per house, it wouldn't affect this particular address. And as it says in the report, in 20 years we haven't received a complaint anywhere else in the town regarding this issue. So to pass the bylaw tomorrow isn't going to have the desired results on this particular street.
Because they were there before the bylaw was in place.
Correct.
So I think I understand. May I?
Yeah.
So I think I understand that the reason why you've never had a complaint in the town is because a single tow truck per dwelling in a residential area is not an issue. It's when it becomes multiple tow trucks. I think this is a unique situation. I don't think you probably ever had 3 in one house before. Is that true? It seems unique to me anyway.
Through the chair, in my existence in 11 years now, I have never heard of 3 tow trucks, but I think that shows how isolated this is.
Yeah. So, so now we're faced with a situation where we have temporary no parking on a street, which has caused another inconvenience for our residents, and without any control over how many tow trucks are in that residential area, once we take the no parking signs down, as it is a temporary measure, what can we offer the residents to say that this isn't going to continue again?
If we pass the bylaw today, it's not going to change from now forever what happens at Hadley Road. If there's more than 3 tow trucks at this property, nothing will change the use of that property, regardless if we do the bylaw today or in 2 years. There is no restrictions we can put into place today that's going to fix the problem at this street.
Councilor Ashby.
Okay, thank you through the chair. You've indicated that in your 11 years, you've never seen this example in town in terms of 3 tow trucks on one property. I understand the issue at this particular property, but I guess I'm just going to presume for Councilor Crawford, what measures can we put in place to specifically address this issue at this property? Are you saying that there's nothing we could do?
Through the chair, that's correct. Other than any changes we're going to make to the zoning bylaw is not going to affect anybody who's currently operating, whatever those future extensions are. As when we passed the bylaw in 2003 and we stopped the parking of boats and trailers on people's driveways, that became a legal non-conforming use, and we may go onto a street and tell somebody that they're not allowed to have their boat, meanwhile their neighbors are, because it was a legal non-conforming use and the boat has been there consistently for the time that the bylaw has been amended.
Further?
Yeah, I just was looking, I don't know whether it's through bylaw or zoning, what can be done specifically at this property to address this specific issue? And you're saying nothing from bylaw services point of view?
Correct. I don't know what authority we would have under the Municipal Act to pass any of the bylaws. This is a land use issue, which is covered under the zoning bylaw.
Okay, so maybe if I could ask a question then to Gary. Specifically, what can we do through planning to address this specific issue at this location?
I think Derek had indicated quite accurately that zoning bylaws aren't retroactive. So we could pass a zoning bylaw tomorrow, but it doesn't affect someone's rights who have already been there. So if a new proposal for tow trucks or whatever wanted to come into a residential area, it would take that up from a this day forward type of basis. But I don't think zoning is the right tool to try to get rid of something that's already there. If the issue has to do with something about on-street parking or that kind of thing, and creating or maintaining that restriction to ensure that overnight parking isn't happening, and enforcing that, that might be the way to go if they are parking on street overnight.
And has there been any tickets issued at this property for parking on the street?
Yes, we've issued 30 tickets in a year.
They've been very active.
That's over 100 inspections that we've been doing on the street. And there's been 30 or 100 separate complaints on the street. That's been 30 tickets that have been issued.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it's a problem, and just judging by you know what the residents are saying, the resources we're spending here, and the tickets that we're issuing. I don't think it's something that you can just leave. We need to come up with a solution here. And
There isn't a nuisance law, is there?
Yeah, I don't think doing nothing is a solution. So I think, you know, either we defer it or send it back, but we need to come up with a solution to deal with this property. And like I said, I don't think the solution is to do nothing.
Councilor Dice.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair. It's my understanding that, you know, bylaws really are in place because somebody has done something that impacts somebody within the neighborhood. And here we have an issue that keeps coming back and obviously has a huge impact on the neighbors, whether it's first time, second time, whatever. There's a problem here. So I feel the same way that, you know, I feel kind of useless. What's the point in having bylaws or a committee to make a decision if you can't make any changes that lessen that impact? And I hear you, our hands are tied because the the zoning, but there's got to be something that we can, I mean, I would have a problem if I live on a street and I've got 3 or 4, trucks parked in the driveway next to me in a residential area, and they're conducting business at all hours of the day in that residential area. That's no quality of life for the people living next to it. I know we've done what we can, put, temporary parking, no parking signs in place, but we can't get it reduced to 1 truck per residence. Is there anything else?
More than happy to look again, but
Have we had any discussions with the owners of these trucks? Several. And they won't cooperate at all?
cooperation comes and goes. There's times that they're good, there's times that they're not good.
So I think what you're telling us is that until such time we can change the municipal act, which is a provincial responsibility, our hands are tied. Is that what you're telling me?
The regulating of vehicle parking has always been handled through the zoning bylaw, and right now they have a use on that property. The same as if somebody lived beside somebody with 3 pickup trucks that belong to Joe's Plumbing. It's the same thing. It's the use of the commercial that we don't regulate, the use of the vehicle. It's the size of the vehicle that we regulate.
Yes.
So, I personally, I think we need to defer. We have to come up with something. I know, Derek, you've done what you can, but I think that for the future, or whether it's an interim or whatever it is we need to do, we need to separate the commercial and the tow truck for one thing. And the tow truck needs to be dealt with on its own through zoning bylaw, whatever, where it's restricted to 1 per dwelling in a residential area. Because even if I can't do anything about this through bylaw, then I have to be able to protect the residential, what? Oh, the residential areas in Ajax. So, you know, if the owners of these tow trucks happen to move out and go into another neighborhood, there's nothing to stop them from doing exactly what they're doing in somebody else's backyard. So I really believe that we need to separate the commercial use vehicle or weight or whatever it is, and be specific with tow trucks, period. But I think we need to do something better than no parking on the street. And I don't know what to tell you. I think that as a representative of the constituents in Ajax, my hands have been tied, as your hands are tied through whatever the bylaw restrictions are. But I have to be able to give them something better than no parking. So I respectfully ask to defer this. I'm sorry.
I'll recognize you once Councillor Dyes is finished.
Just one comment. In terms of any bylaw that we're passing, if it's either through the comprehensive bylaw or otherwise, we want to ensure that any bylaw is defensible. So if a bylaw is passed that specifically earmarks tow trucks, the question will be, why tow trucks and not this kind of truck, this kind of truck, or this kind of truck, and how can that be defended if in the instance of an appeal? So that's part of the rationale of looking at it comprehensively, and to look at the commercial parking regulations comprehensively as well. I think we want to be in a position before Ontario Municipal Board hearing and saying, well, it's tow trucks because of this situation and only this situation, as opposed to looking at the broader issue, which does need to be looked at certainly. So that's part of the rationale as well.
Understood. Okay.
Okay.
I'm not going to pass a motion for all the consent items until later in the meeting in case the other members make the meeting. Is there any other questions on the consent agenda? And, we'll go to presentations. 5.1, application for environmental compliance approval. Index Energy Mills Road. Mr. Mueller, or Gary, Mr. Mueller?
Yes, thank you. Great. Okay, thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. The report before you recommends support for some technology changes that have been proposed with the steam plant in order that the facility will be in compliance with some upcoming changes to MOE's regulations.
Now, just by way of background, back in August of 2010, MOE issued an amended certificate of approval to Index to permit a district energy facility on the site on the north side of Hunt Street, west side of Mill Street, to produce steam and up to 25 megawatts of electricity using clean wood-based fuels. Now, in January of 2011, Council provided its authorization to enter into a site plan agreement and licensing agreement with Index to permit the upgrades at the facility. In July of 2011, MOE implemented amendments under Ontario Reg 41905 to introduce updated air standards and related to a number of different substances, including benzoate. And this change would have brought the facility out of compliance when the new standard comes into effect in July of 2016. So in May of 2012, Index filed an application for environmental compliance approval to amend their existing C of A in response to these new regulations. So just by way of background, this is the original site plan and the original site plan approval. And what it shows is the existing plant, which is in yellow, and essentially a new turbine hall, a new boiler hall that will surround the existing building shell, and an enclosed fuel storage building to the south end of the site. And what the emissions control technology that was approved at that point was it's called a bag house, and essentially it's an area that collects particulate and is essentially a very high-end emissions control technology. That would have replaced the existing stack. And some of the other pieces of equipment that was to be provided on the site was a switchgear building and a substation. So there's certainly a lot of equipment happening on site, and certainly met all of the standards and surpassed the standards that were in place at that time. Now, in support of their applications, Index filed 2 reports. One is an emissions summary and dispersion modeling update. And what it did was look at different emission factors for the facility and took into account the fact that new equipment will be provided on site. Not new equipment, is called an electrostatic precipitator. And essentially what it does is it not only addresses those contaminants of concern that were addressed previously, but also the benzoate, which was a new contaminant that MOE had identified as concern. So that technology is being looked at as part of the new model. And one of the recommendations of the report is that MOEs should require testing of the index units to determine that the actual emissions and compliance for the facility on a regular basis. The other element of this submission was an updated acoustic assessment, and just to ensure that the noise implications for this site are in keeping or are compatible with its surrounding downtown environment. So it looked at the closest points of reception. Essentially, those are lands that are designated for residential on the south side of Hunt Street between Monarch and Commercial. And it concluded that MOE's requirements will be met and will not be of concern. But it did outline some physical interventions that could be made to the facility to ensure that it meets MOE's requirements. So roof vents will be fitted with silencers. There will be a noise barrier wall placed on the south side of the transformer, and trucks, which were previously going to access the site from Hunt Street, can now access from Mills Road. The reports and documentation that were filed by the town's peer, that were reviewed by the town's peer reviewer, who concurs with its findings. So essentially, what the change to the site development plan is this new piece of equipment here. This is the electrostatic precipitator. That takes the place of the stack and bag house that was previously proposed in this location. The existing stack would remain. There was a transformer station that was previously in this location, has been moved further north, and a maintenance shop. But what we see as a result of the new plan is that it does open up the back to truck turning maneuvers and eliminates the need to simply access the site from Hunt Street, which we think is a better overall solution. There will be a larger cooling tower over time in this particular location as the facility
meets its ultimate 25 megawatt capacity with the larger cooling tower we were provided in this location. So we've been provided with timelines from Index in terms of the various stages of development that will be taking place stemming from this approval. And Raymond Habetz is here from Index and can answer some detailed questions. But just going through this very quickly, we're expecting an application for site plan amendment in early November, an application for demolition permit in early December, and approval of the site plan before the new year. We see this as a very technical site plan amendment and don't see an issue with being able to meet that timeline. And as we get into 2013, we have the applications for building permit and the construction phases, and then ultimately operation in 2014. Now, essentially, the conclusion of this report is that we're recommending that the proposed changes to the facility will improve its compatibility with the local existing and approved sensitive land uses, and that MOE be advised that the town has no objection to the application that was filed by Index. So that is my presentation, Madam Chair, and Mr. Habetz is here from Index as well. If you have any specific questions for him.
Mayor Parrish.
Thank you for your presentation, Mr. Mueller. On page 79, the timeline that you just went over, I take it that you will be advising council when each of these dates arrives?
Yes.
And indicate to us whether that timeline's been met or not?
Yes.
Because to date, there have been timelines that have not been met. And I see this as a tight timeline and one that's necessary to get this thing where it should be on a timely fashion. And if any of these timelines are missed by any appreciable amount of time, this thing is going to go south, in my view. And I'm very pleased to see this time frame provided by the applicant. This isn't our time.
No, this is provided by Index. Yes.
This is Index's time frame.
That's correct.
So I think it's going to be very interesting to see that they stay on this timeline. So, for example, November 3rd comes along, I expect to receive, and I bet you there's at least 3 other councillors, and maybe every member of council, who would expect to receive an email from you saying, yep, their application's in, and we're processing it. Or, no, they've missed the first deadline, et cetera, et cetera. Thanks.
Councilor Dias.
Thank you. You mentioned in the report that there is a wall going up with, I guess, the dictator will get a little bit of noise. Where is that going to be located?
That noise wall will be provided right here.
So it's in the middle of the site?
That's right.
Okay, thank you. Also, I just realized you've got an entrance coming in from Hunt Street.
That's correct.
And is that where the trucks will be coming and going from? Because you also talked about Mill Street.
Right. The previous approved site plan had them coming in from Hunt Street and circulating through the site. However, as a result of the change to the site plan, we're able to get those truck maneuvers off of the mill, and they're able to turn on site. So this redesign loosens the site up a bit to allow the truck turning maneuvers to happen without relying on a Hunt Street entrance.
Okay. The other question I have too is, now we have, prior to this, we had the emissions issue, which determined the height of the buildings and the surrounding area. Now we have the noise as well that's factored into it. Obviously, we have to take height of buildings in consideration in the future, for future developments. Would that radius include, the downtown core, the old Ajax Plaza, that area there?
Yes, it does. The height issue came about as a result of our evaluation through the Central Ajax Land Use Compatibility Study to look at that and understand what essentially that cone of influence was around the stack. And yes, it does include the plaza. It includes the vacant sundial lands to the south. And it increases, height increases with distance from the stack.
Are we still going to meet the proposed growth plan with those limitations on height?
Yes. Our OPA 41 established our unit counts, additional unit counts through the downtown, and 1,850 units was our number that we determined through
OK 41 met and in fact exceeds our growth plan targets. A large majority of that can actually be met on the Medallion site, so I think we'll be well in excess of that if we include not only Medallion but the Sundial lands and potentially any other development that we have in either at the Platte or other sites.
Thank you very much.
Anything further? I just have one question. The certificate of approval that we're supporting, is it a new C of A or is it renewal of the old C of A?
It is an amendment, essentially. The terminology is a little changed, but it's essentially an amendment. So we're allowing for a change in technology. The facility description will change from a bag house to an electrostatic precipitator. The description will change slightly, but it's essentially an amendment.
So this is amending the original certificate of approval?
This
No,
is amending the
the
approval
new
that
certificate of approval that will
That's right.
have a date when it ends and
That's
we have
right.
to apply
Yes.
again. Okay, that's fine. That wasn't so before. Anything further?
Move it.
Moved by Mayor Parish. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. We're going to go along with the next one, the 5.2, the traffic calming.
Is this the first presentation we've had by Juliana?
Yes, I think so. Not to make you nervous or anything.
No, you just might want to introduce yourself.
Yes.
Thank you, Madam Chair and Committee. I'm Juliana Petrovich, the traffic analyst for the town. We're bringing you this presentation and the report for the traffic calming update, just to update you on some changes to our traffic calming rankings and address the always stop requests for Chapman Drive and Ducatel Crescent. This year, we reevaluated a number of streets on our traffic calming list. There are currently 72 candidate streets, so that would be streets that have a ranking, or sorry, a score of 30 points or greater out of 100, according to our traffic calming warrant framework. 32 of those streets were evaluated this year or reevaluated with the most recent data. That would include every street that had a score of 51 points or higher, and then any streets that we collected data for this year. This year, we have a new method for evaluating collisions. Previously, we requested summaries from the region. Collisions are identified in the warrant framework as the number of collisions within the past 3 years involving vulnerable road users, primarily pedestrians and cyclists, and or which could have potentially been corrected through traffic calming measures. So some collisions don't meet this criteria, but our previous collision summaries were quite limited. We don't know if there was alcohol involved, certain weather conditions. A lot of times it's not identified if there was a pedestrian or cyclist within the collision. So ultimately, because we could not make that decision, we counted all collisions instead of specifying which ones met the criteria. As of this summer, we have access to the full collision reports that are provided by Durham Regional Police. So we get to see all users involved, if they were a pedestrian, a cyclist, or a motorist, a diagram of the site, and the exact location. Also, if any charges were laid. Our previously identified traffic calming priority streets were Wicks Drive, Shoal Point Road, Clover Ridge Drive West, and Delaney Drive. Our most current ranking is Pickering Beach is our #1 street, followed by Delaney Drive, Clements Road West, Rother Glen Road North. We have also included Chapman Drive, Emperor Street, and Sullivan Drive as priority streets. Previously, it was just the top 4. We're using the top 7 because Rother Glen through Sullivan are very close in ranking, and it's likely that they will shift. So we want to identify them in advance, even though Rother Glen might not be the first one that we address. So our current priority streets, number 1 is Pickering Beach Road. We're hoping to tackle traffic calming on this next year. The 85th percentile speed is 65 kilometers per hour with a speed limit of 50. There have been 6 speed-related collisions on this section of road in the past 3 years. And there's also frontage for the school, the elementary school and the park. It is separated by a chain link fence, but it's still important to consider. Followed by Delaney Drive. The 85th percentile speed, so that's the speed at which 85% of vehicles are traveling at or below, is 15 kilometers above the speed limit of 40. It has a high volume of approximately 7,000 vehicles per day on this residentially frontage street. And there have been 5 collisions on these segments that could have been potentially rectified through traffic calming. Clements Road West is a unique situation. We're coming from an industrial area into a residential area. It's a bit of a transition. The 85th percentile speed is 18 kilometers per hour over the speed limit of 40 kilometers per hour. There's a volume of approximately 5,300 vehicles per day. Based on the size of the community in this area and the expected homes that this street is expected to service, that indicates a significant amount of cut-through traffic. There's also close proximity to the community center, park, and the hospital, so a pedestrian corridor is quite important in this area. Then we looked at Emperor Street. It's a collector road with a volume of approximately 3,000 vehicles per day. It has multiple pedestrian destinations, but the sidewalks are discontinuous, which raises it in the ranking. It has a 85th percentile speed of 13 kilometers over the speed limit, and there was 1 collision in the past 3 years that could have potentially been rectified through traffic calming. Sullivan Drive is very similar to Emperor. Volume's just over 3,000 vehicles per day. The 85th percentile speed is 13 kilometers per hour over the speed limit. There have been 3 collisions on this section of road, and there's also school frontage in the Bend area. Rother Glen Road North is a collector road with volumes over 5,000 vehicles per day, which is quite high for a collector road. The 85th percentile speed is 51 kilometers per hour, which is 11 kilometers per hour over the speed limit. And there's only sidewalks on one side of the road, which again raises its ranking. Chapman Drive has a similar volume of that over 5,000 vehicles per day. And the 85th percentile speed is 8 kilometers over the speed limit. There have been 4 collisions on this section of road that could be attributed to speeding, particularly in the Bend area. Our previously identified streets, next year's project was supposed to be Wicks Drive. In 2007, when it was assessed, we calculated a traffic volume of 2,001 vehicles per day. This spring, new data was collected and it identified 1,351 vehicles per day, which is much more in keeping with data from years prior to 2007. There's approximately 225 homes which would be serviced by this road. The 2007 traffic volume indicates significant non-local traffic. With the current volume of approximately 1,300 vehicles, the cut-through traffic reduces to approximately 30%. This is a really dramatic decrease. It's quite unusual. It's likely that there were other factors contributing to people using Wicks Drive to get off Kingston Road. So this reduction in volume and therefore cut-through traffic decreased Wicks's score by 20 points, which put it behind all of the other priority streets. Shoal Point Road had a recorded 85th percentile speed of 79 kilometers per hour in 2007. That's almost 30 kilometers an hour over the posted speed limit. A radar speed board was installed in 2011 for southbound traffic north of Duckfield Crescent to alert drivers of their speed as they enter the residential area. speed accounts for 20 points out of 100 in our traffic calming warrant. Based on the other criteria of the warrant, Shoal Point Road ranks behind all other priority streets because of the other factors. There's only been one reported collision between 2006 and 2012, and it occurred when a deer struck the side of a moving vehicle. There's definitely an issue with speeding on Shoal Point Road. We are reassessing the speeds this fall, but it doesn't qualify in the traffic calming ranking, so we would be addressing it through other measures. Clover Ridge Drive West, the street didn't really change. Two collisions were used in the assessment in 2007. We reviewed the collisions based on the new collision data, and we identified none that would have qualified under the warrant criteria for collision. So that drops its ranking by 10 to 14. Through this report, we also looked at the potential for an all-way stop at Chapman Drive and Ducatel Crescent. In the past, we've had multiple residential requests for an all-way stop at this location because motorists find it uncomfortable to make a left-hand turn off of Ducatel onto Chapman. In 2006, the town hired Cernus Transtex to complete a technical review of the intersection. They identified that an all-way stop at this location was unwarranted and sightlines were deficient. That means that sightlines on Chapman Drive do not allow for a motorist traveling eastbound to anticipate a stop at this location. Reconstructing Chapman Drive to provide adequate stopping site distance for an all-way stop at this location is impractical, as it would likely require property acquisition. We reassessed the intersection with 2011 volumes against our all-way stop warrant. Ducatel Crescent and Cornwall Drive accounted for 14% of the intersection volume. For a street to warrant an all-way stop, there would need to be a 70-30 split. So the stop would be unwarranted. Unwarranted all-way stops contribute to non-compliance at intersections. Combined with the sightline issues, we do not recommend a stop at this location. That's all. Any questions?
Mayor Parrish.
A couple of questions. In the body of the report, on page 90, the last paragraph, when it talks about Clements Road West, it says Clements Road West between Monarch and Harwood is budgeted to be reconstructed in 2015. Am I like hallucinating, or was not that stretch just resurfaced within the last 2 or 3 months?
It was just resurfaced.
So it's going to be, we resurfaced it, and 3 years from now we're saying it's going to be reconstructed?
According to last year's budget.
But certainly this must now be wrong.
Likely.
Likely? It's ridiculous.
Mr. Meredith?
Yeah,
I know this is not you're not to blame for this, Juliana. It's this guy.
We have resurfaced Clements Road between Harwood Avenue and Monarch Avenue this year, and then within the forecast, sort of between Monarch and Wesley Road, we'd be looking to do, but not reconstruction.
Sorry, the section you'd be looking to do in 2015 is?
Well, sort of beyond the next couple of years between Monarch to Wesley Road, so that next section.
Well, that section, but certainly it says clearly in this report, Monarch, between Monarch and Harwood Avenue is budgeted to be reconstructed in 2015. So that was misinformation given by the operations department.
If you looked at the capital detail sheet.
Okay, I don't want to belabor it, but it's not going to be reconstructed.
It's not going to be reconstructed.
Okay, thank you. That's all I need to know. Sorry. The other question is on the Chapman issue. I know that Chapman is partially a cycling route. Isn't Chapman a cycling route with Sheros all the way from Kingston Road to Harwood Avenue?
It is identified as a cycling route. It will be
All the
part of-
way?
Yeah, it just had Sharrows put on it.
And the Sharrows are that entire distance?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. And just to refresh my memory, normally, this type of stop sign request would go through our previous approved 5 years ago, or whatever, warrant program. If it's warranted, it would be considered, it goes out to the neighborhood has to turn out in a certain percentage, and they have to give thumbs up in a certain percentage, and then we do it, right? And this hasn't gone through that process.
No, because it's not warranted.
Yeah, it doesn't even meet the threshold to go through that process, right? And the staff's unequivocal staff's recommendation is not to approve it, primarily because of sightlines.
This section of Chapman Drive ranks for traffic calming,
Yes.
not for an all-way stop.
But
So-
when you go through the traffic calming process,
Mhm.
you would potentially look at all forms of traffic calming, including a stop sign, would you not?
Absolutely, but Chapman Drive, it's street 6 or 7 on our list, so we haven't got to it yet as
Yeah.
far as public consultation and the traffic calming processes.
So if it's number 6, it would seem to me that maybe in 13 or 14, you might get to Chapman traffic calming, or maybe beyond that.
It depends if we get support on the previous streets. If we don't, then it would move up more quickly. If we do, it'll.
You tend to
take
do
longer.
one, no more than 2 a year.
Implementation would be 1 per year.
And how many actual studies as a precursor to potential implementation would you do in a year? 1, 2, 3?
We are actually changing our method of surveying residents. It used to be that we would survey, and if we didn't get support, we would do a second survey. Now we're trying to survey streets in advance so that we know that we have support, so
Right.
that we can implement every year instead of missing years.
So you could do the assessment on Chapman in the near future,
Yes.
but it wouldn't likely be implemented for several years.
Yes.
Thank you.
Councilor Ashby.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Again, with Chapman Drive, I just have a little bit of concerns with the recommendation. I lived on that street for 14 years, and I've seen the traffic build there. When you're coming from Harwood and Chapman, and you're traveling towards Highway 2, just the grade alone, you don't even have to have your, you don't even have to be on the accelerator. But by the time you pass Ducatel, my experience is the vehicles there are going well beyond whether it's 50 or 60 kilometers an hour. I thought that when Runnymede put their infill development there at the bottom, I thought for sure that we would have gotten at least a 4-way at Ducatel and Chapman. And the residents in the area, they have been on me for some sort of a traffic calming, whether it's a stop sign, and I understand, like I really do understand the whole issues with stop signs and so forth. And if they don't meet the warrant, you know, people might not necessarily obey that sign, but something has to be done on Chapman. And I can't go back to my constituents and tell them, well, it doesn't meet the warrant yet again. So I'm a little disappointed in this recommendation. The other one, and I noticed it's not on this list, but it was on the list that I had given you, was Williamson Drive from Westmead to Harwood. And when you look at Williamson Drive, west of Westmead Road, there's traffic calming in terms of the roundabouts, and by Salem, there are more traffic calming in terms of the roundabouts. But when you go from Westmead to Harwood, there's nothing. And I've been out there on a number of occasions with residents, with the signboard, and just monitoring traffic. There's nothing that stops vehicles from, they just speed past. Even the Durham Transit, sorry to say, they speed on that street as well too, because there's no limitations there.
again, we have identified that there is a speeding concern on that stretch of road, particularly where it crosses the creek. But as far as traffic calming goes, it ranks behind the other streets.
Further? Councillor Crawford?
I wondered, has there ever been any research into traffic calming on Ravenscroft from Roslyn to Taunton? It's not a high residential area because there's churches there. So, and there's that new development there where Sobeys is starting to expand larger and larger and access from obviously 407. When Westney is full, they cut across and come down Ravenscroft. Has there been any research or I don't know what I'm trying to say, whatever it is you do there? Have you looked at it?
Because
How's that?
because Ravenscroft isn't complete, we wouldn't be able to
Okay.
collect correct data. And there are 2 all-way stops going in, one at Williamson and the other at Telford. So that changes the southern portion of that stretch. The northern portion, we would have to assess once that's complete.
Once you take, what is it, you get, that's it. Sorry, just lost my train of speech.
Anything further?
Okay, thank you.
Mayor Parrish?
I'll give you the motion, Madam Chair, but I know that I'm sensitive to Councillor Ashby trying to accomplish something for this neighborhood, and it's obviously a frustration for him. So I'll simply give you the motion on the full report, but I'd give you also a motion to separate 3 out from 1 and 2 so that certain councillors who might feel that they have to vote a different way on Chapman issue than the others are free to do that.
Okay, thank you. Before I do that, I just have one question. Pickering Beach Road, what type of traffic calming can you do in addition to the roundabouts that are there?
What we anticipate is that we will modify the roundabouts. Ultimately, the way it is now, you can drive straight at the roundabout.
Yeah.
And people are speeding, and that's where the collisions are happening. They are driving straight into the roundabout and hitting it. So we need to redirect them into the roundabout.
Well, they have to be mountable because of the buses, but people still do not know how to use a roundabout. I mean, I think, along with what you're suggesting, we still have to do a lot of work in educating people as to how to use a roundabout.
Absolutely. We're also looking at potentially installing bike lanes to narrow the road.
Okay, thank you. Mayor Parrish has a motion on the floor. Did you get what he?
Just for clauses 1 and 2 of the recommendation first.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, clauses 1 and 2. All those in favor? Carried, thank you. And clauses,
On clause 3, I guess maybe I might offer something. I don't know if this helps or not, but it's odd to have a recommendation to not do something. And so if you prefer, you can just leave that one unaddressed for now, thinking that it might come back
Resolve.
at some future date. Now, I don't know, maybe Councillor Ashby wants to be more proactive
I
on
want to be more
that.
proactive on that.
So Councillor Ashby's going to bring a motion then, as I understand it, to bring a motion that basically says everything the 3 says without the word not in.
Okay.
Strike the word not.
So and that is a separate motion. Yes.
Okay.
I think that's, yeah, I think you're right, I think it's better.
okay.
I'll put forward that motion.
I don't have that motion in front of me.
Well,
Take over.
It's just it without not.
Yeah.
that'll always stop, be implemented.
Okay, all right. Any comments on that one? Mayor Parrish?
Well, I am sympathetic to Councillor Ashby, and I mean, councillors have these problems from time to time, and they've got residents, busting their chops over these things, and they're elected to serve the people, and they've got to do something about it. But, having said that, it's always extremely dangerous to do these things contrary to a staff recommendation, which in this case is clear and unequivocal. We know that Chapman's going to do traffic calming. Chapman should have as much priority as possible for traffic calming because it is one of those streets, like many others we know of, that is used to cut through from the Durham Center of the Kingston Road to avoid going down to the Harvard intersection, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And when you have cut-through traffic, as locals, you always have speeding and you always have this kind of conduct. So I encourage it being given as much priority as it can be for traffic calming. But we do have a process and it works. And if we go back to the old days, guys, where we're doing one-offs on four-way stops and one-offs on this and that, I mean, you will not be pleased with yourself, let me assure you, because it's just not good. So I can't support Councillor Ashby's motion. I respect that why he has to feel strongly about bringing it forward. I would certainly, as I've said, support giving priority for traffic calming, but you never do a good thing by thinking you're solving one problem by creating another, which is probably a worse one.
Councillor Ashby.
Okay, I'll just, thank you, Mayor Parrish, but all I'll just say is that, first of all, I wasn't here in the good old days, but when I walk around in this neighborhood, and like I said, I lived on this street for 14 years, it is an issue. And, you know, I don't know whether the stop control will cure that issue, but you know, when you're coming west on Chapman, because of the grades and so forth, it doesn't take much to speed on that street. So I think this is a little unique situation. And yeah, given that it is a shortcut from Highway 2 up to Harwood, people use it, and the volumes show that. So we need something there to at least alert the drivers that, look, you know what, kids are playing on that street, unfortunately. And you know, the warrants don't measure near misses, right? And so just, you know, thanks for this support on this recommendation.
Thank you. Anybody else? All those in favor? Carried. I guess the stop sign is going to be implemented on Chapman. Thank you. Congratulations, you did a very fine job of your first report to council. It was very clear and concise, and you answered all questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
This item 5.3, all I'm asking is that we direct staff to review the practices in other municipalities of council's expenditures. We have a policy in place regarding expenditures and a certain amount of money that we can spend on certain items. One of which is attendance at these community fundraisers, which we get invitations to every solitary week, or sometimes two in the weekend. And while I'm not saying that we should increase our budget, that we can attend all of them, but I think there should be some recognition that we have to, it's expected of us to attend these functions. And also that we shouldn't have to go without our partners. And I believe that a certain amount of money should be set aside for a couple to go to these functions. Not all of council, at every function, no, but a budget in place to address the needs of members of council who earn the least of anybody that works for the town of Ajax. And but these functions are very, very expensive. So I'm asking for council to support direction to staff to review the practices of other municipalities, etc. And I can't make that motion. Mayor Parrish.
Well, I won't. I can't support it. I mean, I think there's a couple of things that councillors have to remember. And I know what Councillor was talking about. We get a lot of invitations. Sometimes we wish to bring our spouse or our partner or whatever. And that's our choice. And but we can't ask the taxpayer to pay for a non-council member person except in the most extraordinary of circumstances. And we can't ask it in a year that, because of the Audley Recreation Complex, we're going to have a 3.75% tax increase instead of the normal 2.75. And by the way, reassessment's kicking in for the first time. And some people are going to see an 8-9% tax increase. And you're going to come out at the same time and say, oh, and by the way, we want another $500 a year to take our partners to certain events. And the other thing I want to say, and we made a conscious, deliberate, and I think correct decision to do this, that some municipalities haven't. We still have a policy that's sanctioned by the Income Tax Act that 1/3 of our salary is tax-free. Do the math. That means that you've got a tax-free allowance of something like, and I'm talking on a councillor's remuneration, just a local councillor's, something like $2,500 a year. $2,500 a year. If any member of council can come to me and say, I'm spending more than $2,500 a year on this, you got my ear. I don't think there's anybody who's going to come forward. So I'm not touching this baby with a 10-foot pole. Anybody who wants to, go ahead. Have a good time.
I didn't bring this forward because I don't have a partner. It's because we're out nearly every night throughout the week. Then we're supposed to be attending these functions on the weekend. That's another time that you can't be with your partner and sharing company. So it's not a case of wanting to increase the budget. I said that you should be, money is set aside to maybe 1 or 2 councillors to go to these different events, not all of us to attend all of the events. So I bring this forward. There's been numerous functions that members of staff should have been at, and they haven't been because the money's not in the budget. So part of this review, they're going to review the whole expenditures of council. We have reviewed every practice of what goes on in this town, other than expenses. That's all we're asking for is a review and a report that could come back to council. So I need a motion if
So we're not making any decisions?
No.
You're just asking for permission to
Yep.
review the matter?
Yep.
So there's no harm?
Nope.
Okay.
Okay, lost for want of,
So nobody,
no reason,
Not on the
no,
floor.
not on the floor.
Oh, so you need a motion?
Yes.
Okay, I'll make the motion.
Okay. All those in favor? Lost. 3? Yeah. Oh, carried. Going back to the consent agenda, Councillor Jordan is still in meetings at the region. So items 4.1 and 4.4, she had questions on those 2 items. So maybe in council floor they might come up where she can address them between now and Monday.
Yeah, sure. Any of these can be rediscussed
Yeah.
on Monday.
Yes. So can I have a motion for the consent agenda?
I would just pull 4.5.
Okay.
I'll give you a motion on that.
Okay. All those in favor? Carried, thank you. 4.5, questions?
My question basically, have we decided who's going and who's representing the town on this?
Councillor Dice?
I replied to say that I agreed to go.
You're going.
I have replied,
But we already have a council member, at least one that's going.
Yes.
Okay, that's all I need. That's it.
Reviewing that one? All
Yep.
those in favor? Thank you. I think we're done. Is there any other business that, any reports from members of staff that want to report? No?
I'll move
Thank
adjournment.
you, Tracy. We have one.
We have one first.
Sorry, just a quick one. Just wanted to let you know that the Ajax Community Center received the Eat Smart Award again from Durham Health Department. department.
what?
Eat
Eat
Smart.
Smart.
Smart, okay.
So it recognizes the ability of the center to provide healthy, nutritious options for our residents. So there's just 3 that were given out, and Ajax Community Center was one of the 3. So just wanted to let you know that we have been recognized for that work.
Thank
I
you.
thought we had more than one site recognized.
Sorry?
I thought we had more than one site recognized. I thought it was ACC and, no, I guess it was just ACC. I'm sorry.
I think in history perhaps,
Okay.
this year